Hi, okay, I'm going to discuss all the tasks waiting on this Marina. I think this is the radio control that was going to be used with it, an old ACOMS 2 channel, but I'm going to have to find the receiver and servos, and I sort of need to get that ready for installation. I'm busy sort of fitting these two pieces, these two boards. They're just loosely fitted in there, but I need to sort of position the servos and see what height they need to be at. Now this is still old time radio, and while I know everyone is on 2.4 gigahertz, I'm not really familiar with whether this is still okay or whatever. And it's only a little boat that's going to go on the local dam, but if you have knowledge on that, I'm open to hear. I think I have one 2.4 gigahertz which is currently in a little aeroplane. I found this unpleasant mix that was used on a little bit of a painting job a while ago, but it does look like the right kind of scummy brown that I would want to use for a little bit of dabbing, just very subtle. But this is acrylic, and I can't remember how sort of steadfast it is. So what we're going to have to do, and I'm going to have to find something, I guess just some sheet plastic might do, where we'll do a little bit of a test. I'm going to use very, very little. It's not going to be much at all, and in fact, it's good that it's water-based, because if I find that I'm not happy with it, it's going to get rubbed off and cleaned off fairly quickly. Use this sponge that I used originally, but instead of using it flat like that, I was in fact dabbing it like that, which is why this is all still covered in that. Luckily the smell is gone. But it's a very nice rough type sponge, and I only want a little bit, and I possibly want a little bit of dragging. So that's the second tone, but this might be pushing it, in that it's a bit too light. We'll see. I'll do a test first. And I might use some of that just to slightly dull down this white, or not sure. This is the original box color scheme that they did, and to be honest, I don't like that at all. It looks very bright and shiny. Okay, but I'm going to refer back to that momentarily. So the engine fitment looks sort of okay, which is that. However, that length of tube is probably going to be shortened. I can't remember what I think I just grabbed a piece of tube. It probably wants to be very close so that it doesn't bend. It must actually just act as a little universal joint at a slight angle. Now, when I get to these railings, those railings, and those wire railings, let alone the masts, but the railings probably, yeah, the railings will be before. Masts will be absolutely last. The railings can only be put on when the amount of handling that the boat is going to undergo is very minimal, which means absolutely cannot do railings while I still have to manhandle around this this rudder post and all that sort of thing. That piece. What else? Well, certainly the weathering. I'm not yet decided on these holes to let water off the deck. It certainly doesn't need it, and while I could, I'm just not sure that it's really worth the effort. Still thinking about it. So This needs to happen fast. I need to find the radio stuff fast. I need to get the mounting of stuff done. Now the railings, and I'm just going to show you this. They've got square pieces there. Those little uprights are square, but I think it's going to be ridiculously too flimsy to have little uprights on here and then gluing that layer, which is sort of close to that, onto there. So I've decided to go with dowel, the same stuff that some of the mast pieces are made out of. Drill that hole in there. That's, I think, 3mm. It needs to be tight fit so that it sinks just the 2mm into there, and that gives it that rigidity to just hold it vertical. And then drill a 1mm hole. Now I don't know if I'll be able to get it right to drill into here without it actually going through, but in the event it goes through, no problem, it can go flush. And so that the little dowel can actually hold each of those positions, as opposed to this sort of, you have to have this plank bent around and glued on, and that absolutely is the first thing that'll break on that. Now that's not a very difficult task, just drilling the various holes. Note they are not all vertical, they actually sort of go in perpendicular. Not really a big deal, you could do them any way you feel like, but just so that they're sort of perpendicular to the rail. Quite easy. Those there is this. Where did I put them? And that takes this thicker brass. This takes this thicker brass as the rail for the back of the boat, and that goes through there. So that's not bad at all. The only challenge that gives, well, two challenges, is to be able to bend this nicely so that it doesn't have all these little kinks and bumps in it. Have to really get that done to look neat, and you can see they didn't get it quite right on even their cover picture. And also that this little piece of brass is mounted again into that railing. Now this is, I mean, it's not strong, but it's not weak. It would bend, but there's nothing else you can do about that. These just have to be a little bit difficult here. They just need to be drilled into this railing so that it's a nice tight fit. Super glue them in. But if you do them all and then try and feed the brass rail in, you're very likely to bend that rail. So probably what you need to do is bend the rail and get it as absolutely smooth as you can to that contour. And it contours a little bit up around there. So it sort of takes a bend up and around there, but you can place it on here as the measure, so that's not too bad. Slide all of these things in, having drilled the holes. Slide all of these little posts in, and then gradually just slide them in, position them in, and super glue them in. So not the worst of tasks. And then the end of that railing, goes somehow into that white railing over there, either under it or into a hole in the end of it. But I must just make sure to actually match the length of this brass railing, and this brass railing is actually quite short. So the back rail is lower than the side rails, which means that, well, that piece of brass will sort of take a bit of an upslope, so that's no problem. Now I've sort of got all of my mast pieces ready to start looking at the tapering process, which of course is while I'm busy on all of those other tasks, the tapering needs to happen. And I will practice on this little pine dowel first to make sure that I'm happy. Don't want to mess that up. One of the little tricks that I've decided is two of these pieces, which are a little bit short, that one is up to there, that one is up to there, so this middle piece doesn't actually exist, is to keep it all together so that I can work on this piece and have this excess inside here as I'm busy tapering that. And that's not a huge amount of tapering, but it sort of does need tapering. Same with that one, so that I've got as good a bracing process as possible, because working on a short thing, if you didn't leave some extension, you wouldn't really have much to work with. I hope that works. I mean, keep in mind that I'm not an experienced chip modeler. I'm just trying to come up with the best process. So while most of the viewers of this channel up to this point are plastic modelers, and I'm sure they'll gain some ship modelers as we go along, I'm hoping that I can come up with the best processes to handle these things which I'm not that familiar with. Now, with the mast assembly, and I'll show you this. With the mast assembly, we've got these extra braces, which are also dowels, slightly stronger type of dowels. And that's not a big problem, but I've got all of that. You see that those ladder railings on both that mast and this mast. So I think there's I don't know, 28 in total. Something like that, 28 in total. Now they're easy enough to make. I just bent one quickly, and while that's just a rough guesstimate of the shape, that's sort of what it would come out to, possibly squeezed together a little bit more. So a flat ladder side, and then it needs to go into the dowel. Now, so obviously mine isn't squeezed together enough, but thinking about this, I need to get a tapered mast, and they're not terribly tapered throughout the ladder part, probably from about 6 millimeter down to 3 to 4, 3.5 millimeters, but still that's, you know, that's about half this thickness. It looks like you have to drill holes in the mast and slot in the two ends. So that means you need to drill 2 holes, and correct me if any of you know any differently, but that's what it looks like here. Obviously the angle can change slightly. I mean, one could get away with bending your brass so that you've got that flat section, then it comes in and then it goes a little bit straight. You could try and put it in like that. But I'm thinking that the very simplest method is obviously just narrowing this down so that those two ends are a bit closer together. That you make your 28 of these, but the lower ones can be spaced about like this so that they can get into the thicker part of the mast, and the upper ones are pushed in a little bit more. But if the mast was tapered already, I would really struggle to drill those holes. So I'm thinking that one needs to drill all the holes first before you start with the mast tapering. Now it's not this piece, it is a shorter one, so it's only over a section about that long. Drilling 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, about 18 on one and about 10 on the other. And I know from drilling into a curved surface that I wouldn't really trust myself necessarily. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll have to try on my spare dowel to see if I can drill 1 millimeter holes, 1.2 millimeter holes, line them up exactly, because you want all of them to be nicely in a line, equally spaced, going down to a certain depth, then turn this thing so that you can drill the other holes, and they must all match up nicely. So I was pondering making a, I'm not sure what you call it, a jig, a template out of brass. Put a brass tube over it, drill the brass out so that you can slot this over, do the one mast, slot it over, do the other mast. I'm not sure if that's making too much work, as opposed to just marking them in pencil and drilling them. And inside, so if you imagine this is a cross section of the mast, and you're drilling in there and you're drilling in there, you're probably going to meet in the middle because you've got so little space to work with. In fact, you're quite likely to even go past the middle, and it's not to say it'll be a 45. I'm not sure what it'll be, maybe a bit more than 45 or so, whatever angle reasonably suits. And then as you get narrower, the amount of space left over in between these is quite small. So you've got to drill nicely not to break pieces of your mast out, which I guess I could do. So I'm a little bit open to whether it's just mark it and drill, and then do the tapering. Either way, definitely tapering must come second, because holding the thinned and tapered mast, trying to drill, I think is this not as easy as just taking it as it is right there. So obviously some of your drilled depth gets tapered away, but that's sort of almost the reason to come together in the middle. Not that that's specifically the plan. I don't know how that would work out. I guess I just have to take one and start trying. So I'd have to obviously brace it well on a jig, on a vise, get it all vertical, get your marks down, and practice and just see. Now this pine is going to be easier to drill than the harder woods, so I mustn't sort of trick myself into thinking that was so easy, and then I get to the hardwoods and it wasn't that easy. I've got enough spare, and I'll see. So holes in the masts is the very next thing that needs to happen before we can even get to that. Luckily it's only 2, but still it's quite a lot of holes, and you really don't want to be trashing your nice cut mast. There's far less rigging than I thought, apart from the couple of lines on each sail, and apart from the derrick line. That's the derrick there, the hoist derrick, a couple of lines on that, and the line on the fishing rods. There's next to nothing else. There's one line running across the masts for lights, electric line. So rigging at the end is it's not, it doesn't all happen at the end, but the rigging is hardly an issue on this boat. There's a bit of line that gets wound up for the rods. There's tying on the tires is no big deal. So I need to find those servos. It's been so long. I've packed them all away, and by this stage they are deep undercover. So I've got this one. I've got this 2.4 gigahertz, but I need to see what radio that was for, whatever. I've got so many radios here, probably about 8 radios, most from ages gone by. This is the battery pack, old style, so that's close to 20 years old. But I don't think there's any problem with that. It's new, it's never been charged up, there's no reason for it not to be good, and it's nickel metal halide. It's not as potent as the modern ones. and it doesn't need to be. This is a low performance item, and we want the weight of the battery as well. The little posts have all been cut. I did that yesterday. So anyway, that's more or less where it is at this stage. I was wondering whether I should enhance the strength of these little side railing pieces by putting a little thin tube, a brass tube in there, because it's like you just bump the boat at the rear here with your hand or something and you will have bent a couple of those. But I'm gonna go with it and just, you know, just be careful. Oh, it's got these strakes on the side. This hasn't been put on the hole yet. I'm also not sure if I want to, but give your opinions on that. I know that aids in directional stability and probably should be put on. The only other thing with this is on a very short little bit there. Now obviously that's going to go a bit deeper because I lose that latching mechanism because I built it wrong. And that's a very short thing, so I'm going to probably have to drill a hole through here, at least one, and put a brass pin through there, or even possibly a brass screw. And I mean, the rudder doesn't have tons of stress on it, but this little piece, all of its structural strength has to come from just that small mount without that toothing. Unless I produce a new toothing, which is quite a big job. And I am not going to redo that bush as one of you suggested. I'm just going to angle this thing slightly when it gets mounted. Just angle it ever so slightly so that it does match, because it's close enough. So anyway, it's all laid out. Oh, I collected these little anchors a while back. They're not for this kit, and they're not shown on the box, and I don't know if fishing vessels even have an anchor, this little trawler. But I thought it might look nice, so I'm thinking of putting 2 little anchors on it. I know they're probably, like, you know, a bit heavy for the size of the boat, such a small boat, but I think it'll look cool. Okay, that's a bit of an update. Quite a number of things for me to try and find and get going, but it's getting there. Happy modeling. Cheers.